Every major company has its blunders. Nintendo made the worst-selling console ever in the form of the Wii U. Xbox almost killed its own brand with the disastrous launch of the Xbox One. And Sony has no luck with its products that are not home consoles, with the exception of the PSP. The Vita was a disaster, the PS Move was a fart in the wind, and I doubt the PSVR was the breakthrough into the VR space that Sony expected. But for most of these failed products, they had a reason to exist. They were created to appeal to some audience that they either didn't have a foothold in, or just to keep the audience they had engaged with their pre-existing products. The Vita was aiming to further engage the audience that Sony had captured with the PSP. The VR headsets tried to get ahead of the curve and grab the potentially big VR market that hasn't been born yet, and the Move was birthed in a misguided effort for the PS3 to remain competitive against the Wii. But what the hell is the PlayStation Portal for? What is Sony's angle with this device? I don't get it. The obvious Achilles heel of the PlayStation Portal is its requirements to have a constant, and high-quality internet connection at all times, through a Wi-Fi, to be able to stream games, as this product is just a glorified PS5 controller with a screen attached to it. But as we all know, streaming games is a horrible way to play games, for most places in the world. The necessary infrastructure and quality of the internet service needs to be very good, so that the game that is being streamed doesn't suffer from any noticeable latency on inputs or even for the game to even be playable in the first place. And what countries have that kind of reliable service offered at all times? Maybe some parts of the United States, some parts of Europe and Japan. And even in optimal situations, certain genres won't be a pleasant experience to play through streaming, as they require the game to run as well as it does natively in a console for the player to properly respond to things happening on the screen, such as fighting games or certain first-person games. So out of the gate, the PlayStation Portal, which I'll only refer to as the Portal from now on, is limited in its appeal and reach. It won't attract nor work as a handheld console for the same reasons stated before. People who like to game on hybrid consoles, such as the Switch or the Steam Deck, enjoy those consoles because you can play them literally anywhere you want, and have a very similar, if not identical, experience to the one had in other systems. So being a streaming device, the Portal is a no-no for that audience. Hell, even as a cloud streaming machine it is a bad proposition. Why? Because Sony decided, in a Galaxy Brain move, that the Portal won't be able to stream from the cloud, just directly from a PS5. You need to connect it directly to your PS5, regardless of where you are in the world, to stream games that it is running to use the Portal. Why? Why can't a product, designed to stream games, do that from the cloud, considering it might run better depending on how close you are to the cloud server versus your own PS5? Nobody knows, only Sony does. And it absolutely boggles the mind. Mind you, it wouldn't have saved the device, as there is already so much stuff going against it, but that feature right there might have made the Portal find a niche. It's not because they don't have the infrastructure, because you already do that for some old games on the PS5, and even the Switch can do that. The reason might be something as boring as a directive from inside the company, as not wanting to give Portal the ability to stream games from the cloud before you can do that through remote play on your phone. But if that's the case, why not delay the launch of the product to a moment when you can enable cloud streaming to make the Portal look more like a desirable product, rather than a very expensive paperweight? I mean, once the feature finally rolls out, if it eventually does, people will have forgotten about the Portal by then. And finally, there's the price. Why would someone buy a $200 device, that can only stream, and you have to do that only from your PS5, effectively killing any chance of attracting anyone outside of the PS5 ecosystem, since that would mean shelling out $700 instead of just $200, instead of using that money to buy a Switch Lite that will probably come with a great game and none of those problems. Or just spend an extra $100 and buy a Steam Deck. Hell, You probably can find a refurbished Steam Deck for $200. Both devices for roughly the same price, but far better propositions, in a market that the Portal is supposedly trying to compete alongside them. The Portal just makes no sense. It's a streaming device, but it can't stream through the cloud, just the PS5 you have to own. And now that I think about it, you are screwed if someone else is using your PS5 while you are away or if there is a power outage in your house. Streaming itself is decades away from becoming a truly viable mass-market option, meaning that its appeal was limited regardless. I mean, Google tried that with Stadia and failed miserably. While Stadia had bigger problems, mostly related to its catalog of third-party and exclusive games, you would assume a service from a giant like Google would be able to make at least some waves, but it barely moved the needle. And from a price standpoint, it is completely ravaged by the competition in the market I am assuming it is aiming for. So I am asking Sony or whoever is willing to answer me, for whom is the Portal for? Is it meant to be a response to the Wii U's gamepad? Because that would be a bold strategy by Sony. Let's see if it pays off for them.